Hello, I'm Dr. Jonathan Oates, archivist for the London Borough of Ealing, and this film concerns the history of Southall's Old Library. At the beginning of the 20th century, many towns in and around London were seriously thinking of having a public library. The problem was, for many of them, was a lack of money. However, William Carnegie, who was a famous millionaire in America, having arrived in America as a very poor man from Scotland, made lots of money and wanted to give it away to good causes which would spread education throughout the English-speaking world. He gave large amounts of money to various public libraries. In 1902, Brentford Council had applied to his secretary for money, and in 1903, Southall Norwood District Council decided to do likewise, and a grant of £3,000 was forthcoming in order to buy material to build a library. Southall Council had the foundation stone of the library put there in 1904 by Lady Jersey, who was a local landowner. In July 1905, the local MP, James Bigwood, was to officially open the library, but because he was required to vote in Parliament on that day, it was his wife, Mrs. Bigwood, who opened the library instead. The first librarian was William Louis Coltman, and he wanted the library to be a library as a university for the people. And therefore, he managed to arrange lots of evening classes in the library. The speakers included Mr. Robert Wallace Martin, who was a famous potter of Southall, and he talked about his pottery, the Martin ware. Another famous speaker was an American called T.S. Eliot, and he gave lectures on English literature in the beginning of the 17th century. The library, like most libraries at the time, was one where every book was on closed access. People had to consult a catalogue in order to borrow books that were in the library. They could not browse the shelves as now. However, Coltman, by 1916, had introduced the open access system, which meant people could browse books before actually borrowing them. Now, this was a time of the First World War, and like most able-bodied men, William Coltman was required for military service. However, he argued in front of a tribunal that he was an essential member of civilian staff, crucial for the development of the education in Southall, and therefore he could not be spared to fight. Eventually, however, he was called up in 1917 and undertook 2 years of military service. During his absence, the library had its first female member of staff, Miss Dunn. In 1919, William Coltman returned from the war and undertook his duties as librarian once again. However, in 1920, he took a job working for a trade union in South London. During the 1920s and 1930s, the number of staff at the library increased, and the number of books and newspapers accessible here also increased. During World War II, 3 members of the men employed at the library were called up for war service, and one of the female members was called up for factory work in 1941. During World War II, the library was used by the local refugee committee for Belgian refugees in Southall. It was also used by the Civil Defence Discussion Group for meetings, and a room was also used for the Civil Defence Service in the war as well. After World War II, various developments occurred in the library. In 1948, a housebound service was introduced, and also a hospital service was introduced as well. In the 1950s, a scientific and technical library was opened as part of the reference services to meet the demands of students who were at Southall Technical College, fairly nearby. In the beginning of the 1960s, the Southall Local History Group used to meet here, and Paul Kerwin, a member of the Southall Library's reference services, wrote the first history of Southall, titled Southall, A Brief History. In 1961, the first Indian member of library staff began to work here, and his name was Mr. O.P. Sharma. He worked as a senior assistant in the library between 1961 and 1963, and he left the library in order to take a postgraduate library qualification in America. Also in the 1960s, because of the increased Indian population in Southall, the library would arrange to borrow books from the India Office collection of books in Urdu and Hindi, and these were very well received by the local population. In the 1980s, Ealing Council established an ethnic services library service, which was also based in Southall Library. In more recent times, there has also been a Martinware collection in Southall Library, with donations from people such as Mrs. Knight, by Sidney Greenslade, and also by Professor and Mrs. Hull-Grundy, and that was in a room at the top of the library. There was a big display of Martinware there, and that was visited by people from all around the world interested in the Martinware collection. In 2004, the library closed and moved to a new site in the Dominion Centre. The building is now used for Christian worship. Please remember to tick the like box and to subscribe to Ealing Library's YouTube channel. Thank you.